In the interest of full disclosure, TVO is an agency of the Ministry of Education and has been part of the province's delivery of distance learning since it was created in 1970. Today, TVO offers online secondary school courses through TVO ILC and has been asked by the province to develop online courses for use by secondary schools across the province.
2 years ago, the UN warned about the potential of a generational catastrophe.
Knowing what we know about online learning, a lot of families were just devastated to hear that it was happening again.
It was difficult to have a kindergartner online.
It was overwhelming and challenging.
There's only so much engagement that can happen.
The way you are on a Zoom call is different than how you would naturally be in a conversation.
All the kids were talking at once, or everybody was trying to get the teacher's attention.
These poor kids having to sit 8 hours with this camera right here.
We've just been shocked at the lack of planning in the face of what is quite a predictable outcome. Kids want to be in school. They need to be in school.
This is 2 million kids in Ontario, and they're all of our futures.
Hey Jan, nice to see you in person.
How's it going? We made it. It is April, although I will admit I do not know how to dress for this weather. One day it's sunny like this, the next it is snowing. That's why I have my toque and my vest and everything here.
Well, as they say, April showers brings May flowers. So this month we're talking about education and what it's been like while we navigate this pandemic. As a parent, it's had its moments, and I don't think I've been the best parent because I've had to, even with my husband, we've been everything to our children. In March 2020, when we went online, I don't think anybody thought that, going on 3 years later, we would still be navigating this pandemic. My kids have missed out on seeing their friends. Kids, depending on what board you were in, haven't had an opportunity to participate in extracurricular activities. And, I worry about some of the impacts long term. But yeah, it's been really challenging at times.
You know what? First, you're too critical on yourself, but I also think a lot of parents are. I obviously don't have kids, but I know a lot of teachers, and they're sort of in that same boat. When online learning happened, they were given a really short amount of time to sort of pivot and figure it all out.
Never say that word again.
I know. But they figured it out, and you know what? What I think will be an interesting conversation to look into is sort of looking at learning loss. And have we had a huge loss in terms of the last 2 years, or say, for example, students in grade 5 really working at a grade 3, 4 level? So I'd be curious to see what we find out on that.
And the Ontario government has been criticized for its handling of the pandemic and learning. And I think at the beginning, people understood it was an emergency. We hadn't gone through this. But going on to 3 years, it seems as if we're kind of doing the same thing and then expecting different results.
It's sort of similar to reimagining work. We've done 2 years of this. Here's a great opportunity to stop, look at how we address this crisis with online learning and other tactics. What can we do better, and look forward to the future of education.
And it's also really surprising that some kids have flourished learning online. They don't have to deal with navigating socialization, like you don't have to deal with bullying, or you don't have to experience racism because you're learning at home. And I think the best way to describe the past 2 years and learning in this province is education interrupted. Erin, I'm so happy to see you in person.
Great to be here.
Over the past 2 years, a lot of people have been talking about education. What has Polly found?
Polly has found that there's quite a bit of positivity around education innovation and online education. And that's because now people have lived that experience, and they lived it in an emergency way. So what parents are saying online is, hey, I'd like the good parts about online learning and any other kind of innovation that we can have if we can address some of those isolation and mental health concerns.
I have read stories about kids who are benefiting from being online, even kids within the Black community saying that they learn better online because they don't have to face the microaggressions that they might face in a school environment.
Those communities are actually saying we did better in this environment than we did in the regular classroom. And one of the things that you have to understand is education in Ontario wasn't really working well, according to parents, before COVID. There's been a lot of criticism about the reforms that have come in on education, a feeling that education is not innovating. And parents seem to understand this, that Ontario needs to invest more in education or reform education. And so they are open to having this discussion, whether it's going to be online learning or VR learning or what have you.
There's been a conversation about why before the pandemic there was a move to go to online. And I think one of the general sentiments was that this was a way for the government to save money. Does Polly pick any of those conversations up?
She does, and the parents are quite divided on that. I mean, there's some parents who say we spend a lot on education and yet we have poor outcomes as a province compared to other jurisdictions that spend less. So maybe
it's an opportunity to do something else?
Yeah, to innovate. And they feel like the education system has not progressed in like 150 years. I mean, the format is the same as when you and I went to school. Maybe the curriculum and how we teach is different, but the format is the same, and it has not innovated.
Did Polly pick up any concern around learning gaps?
She saw a lot of concern about learning gaps. We're not seeing consistently that people are blaming online learning, simply that there are learning gaps, that and everybody thinks everybody else is being left behind, which is kind of interesting.
Polly picked up some threads around educating kids with disabilities, specifically that they had trouble during the pandemic, and even before the pandemic, they faced accessibility barriers. What did Polly pick up?
If you remember, before the pandemic, there was the cuts to programs or changes. I don't know that they were, reallocating money or whatever to children with autism and things like that. People are talking about that again, but people are definitely saying that any kind of innovation has to really consider children who have learning disabilities, challenges. The teachers need support, the parents need support, the kids need support. And for a lot of these kids, online learning in particular may not work, and they might need other types of innovations. And people are saying, why are we not seeing this being introduced more? Why is it kind of niche things? Like, we should be understanding that kids have different ways of learning and innovate so that it's not everybody sitting in rows in a classroom assuming that we all learn the same way. We don't. We know that we don't.
I have to admit that I'm one of those parents that's really happy that my kids are back to in-person learning, because online learning was not the business. I keep thinking about how much learning loss they've experienced. So, how damaging has it been for our kids? I'm in Trinity Bellwoods Park in Toronto to speak to parents Akil Maroon and Angela Brandt. When you think back during this time, in what ways has the pandemic humbled you as a parent?
I'm a single parent, and so my anxiety and my mental health took a dip. And so it has been a struggle to make sure that my children are doing well when I'm not doing well.
So to be completely frank, people with autism have a lot of practice with isolation. My son desperately requires routine to function, and not being able to tell him, when he's going to be able to go back to school, not being able to participate in his social activities has been a really, really big struggle for him. Because when you're dealing with a person who has additional needs, it takes a toll on you.
At the beginning of the pandemic, my daughter was 6 and she didn't know how to use the computer. So when they started online learning, every 5 seconds she's like, "Mommy, how do you spell this?" And I was like, "I don't know." Google, how do you spell that? But what was your online learning experience like?
My daughter is deaf, and she was born deaf, and she wears hearing aids. And when we transitioned to online learning, the teacher's mic or internet would drop. And at one point, my daughter just broke down and started crying. And she said, my ears aren't working. I can't hear the teacher. So I didn't know how parents were doing it while maintaining a 9-to-5 job. I know I couldn't emotionally or mentally do it.
In terms of online learning, you know, I had to be there full time, but I'm not a teacher. I'm not an expert in teaching my son how to use new things. From the outside, trying to get support was nearly impossible. And he really struggled. And the same affect does not come through on the screen as it does in real life. Especially for kids on the spectrum, they really rely on, you know, body language and facial expression and social cues.
I think when the pandemic hit, the first few months, I think we all understood that, okay, this is what we need to do. This has never happened before. But then when it kind of rolled into the second year and it was kind of the same thing.
I'm emotionally exhausted. I am hanging on by a thread. Most parents are. It's a lot of work. And so it's hard. I don't see the government doing anything to alleviate the emotional labor that women in our community, the advanced emotional labor that we are asked to do.
I think this government was failing our children and failing parents. You know, during the pandemic, especially kids with disabilities, they really felt like an afterthought. You know, Stephen Lecce, who's the Minister of Education, he would go on and talk about how they're going to provide all these extra supports for children with disabilities over the pandemic. But it was really an afterthought because the principal called me and said, you know, you can bring your son to school if you want. We're obligated to provide him a space here, but I have to let you know that who he's going to be with isn't going to be your son's regular support person. We're not even sure if we're going to be able to teach him the curriculum. And so
How did you feel when you heard that?
Well, I opted to keep him home because I thought, well, at the very least, I can help him access the curriculum. But this is a human rights issue. We're talking about Canada. We're talking about, you know, a country that is supposed to be known for their social supports. When Lecce announced the additional, you know, parent support, like a few $100, I'm thinking to myself, well, what good is that going to do? Hire teachers. Let's put that money back into the system. This particular government, I really don't think that they really care all that much, to be honest.
Do you think as if the government has abandoned you?
I think the government has abandoned my community. I wouldn't say that it's abandoned me as an individual because I know there are other people in the same place as me. But yes, has this government abandoned us? 100%.
I feel abandoned.
Yeah.
I personally feel abandoned. My community, which is vast and intersectional. It is queer, it is, you know, single parents, it's racialized. And this government, this conservative provincial government has let me down, has let other immigrants down, has let other parents down, and most of all has put our children in the firing range. The lack of policy and lack of follow through and lack of supports to make sure that our children are educated safely and in an environment that is conducive for learning.
When you think about the last 2 years, especially when it comes to education and the loss and the gaps, how much of a learning loss have your children experienced within this time?
You know, my son, he's 16. This all started a couple years ago, and I know that there's another window of neuroplasticity during puberty. So I know he missed that. He's been with me 24/7. You know, I've been everything to him. And now he's going back to school, and the routine is restarting. And he's 16, and I'm starting to see him being extremely clingy again. You know, instead of this happy-go-lucky kid that just enjoyed the world, he's gained a lot of anxiety and fear, and that's where I see a huge regression.
It's been a lot of work. It has been a full-time job, I can say, trying to keep my children on target for what they should be at and for the level that they should be at, I feel like it's holding sand. I just see it slipping through. Much like a lot of Black parents, we've already, even before the pandemic, had to step in as teachers to make sure that our children are not just doing the average or doing okay, but they're excelling, because we see the ways in which the system treats racialized children differently.
Teachers were also thrown into the deep end when it came to navigating online learning during a pandemic. It was sink or swim, and they got a lot of flack for it because of the number of missteps and confusion around online learning and on a platform that was really untested. So we're going to talk to an educator, get an idea of their experience, but also look at the future of education.
My name is Jamila Rollins, and I'm a teacher in the East End of Toronto.
So Jamila, as a teacher, the last 2 years have been quite interesting, back and forth. The word is pivot.
Right.
How would you sort of sum up your experience over the last 2 years as a teacher?
Well, as you said, it's definitely been interesting. A lot of changes, a lot of being prepared to shift and pivot. I don't like that word. Being prepared to shift because of all the upheavals that's been happening because of the pandemic and everything. So, interesting is the word I choose to use.
What was a typical day like for you?
Well, a typical day was me getting up very early to make sure I have everything all set up and organized, waiting for students to come on. No one's turning on their camera, so I just have to assume they're there. Being concerned when I don't see some students show up, because I'm wondering, is everything okay? Is there a tech issue? Is there something more going on? And because of the not being able to be at school and socialize with their peers, many students don't even want to engage online because it's not natural. It's not the natural way for us to be interacting with each other.
Were there things that you learned about your students or learned about yourself in terms of the online balance?
Yeah, for sure. I learned how to be a bit more tech savvy, which I wasn't before. So just finding other ways to do the same things that I would do to engage my students if we were in the physical space together, finding a way to do that virtually, which for the most part happened, and we were able to still connect and bond and build community. In that sense, it wasn't the worst, but I know for many it wasn't the best experience at all.
You work with students between the ages of grade 6 and 8.
Yes.
What type of impact do you see sort of the last 2 years having on them? These are some big years. Have you noticed or concerned at sort of what the last 2 years will have on that?
Well, definitely for the grade 8s transitioning to grade 9, like there's a lot of learning that's being missed, foundational pieces that are needed, and already that was an issue for many of our students, especially our marginalized students, for a variety of other reasons within the education system. So it's like putting them even more at a disadvantage now because of these gaps that have been created.
Now, is there anything you're doing as a teacher when you're sort of keeping in mind what shifts can happen from learning loss that you're like, as an educator, I need to fill these gaps in, or I need to put more focus on this stuff because this was missed for those last 2 years?
If there's anything, which is something that would be a part of my practice regardless, is making sure to have those deep relationships and meaningful relationships with the students, because once a relationship is developed, then there's a lot more trust that they'll have, and they're willing to work with you because they see that you care.
Follow up to that, do you see us utilizing some of that stuff that we, used in online learning and over the last 2 years? And do you think this is what exactly can we change in education?
Well, that's interesting because I remember when the pandemic started and everyone was talking about we want to return to normalcy. But having conversations with my colleagues and friends about not returning to what was normal, because what was normal wasn't necessarily working for everyone, especially, again, our underserved students. So what that should look like, I'm not entirely sure, but the things that were picked up and noticed that were highlighted because of the pandemic, give more attention to those things like the mental health and well-being of our students, making sure we're building relationships, those foundational pieces in math and literacy that are needed in order for them to be successful as they move forward.
What's the overall sense from some of your colleagues about what this has been?
Many feel like exhausted, overwhelmed, frustrated because of the situations that we're under, the conditions that we're under, and still expected to do certain things, and sometimes expected to do more in our roles as well. So there is a frustration, exhaustion, which is understandable.
Prachi, it's really nice to see you again. So I read this headline recently, and it said education is a shadow pandemic that could eclipse the health crisis and its impact.
When we think of it from that way, we actually do realize that the impact, both in terms of numbers of students and numbers of children that it affects, as well as the longer term consequences, are far going to outlive how we learn to control and live with the pandemic. And what we would like to avoid are the kinds of school closures and disruption that we've seen in the first two years, and certainly in the third academic year that we're in.
What you're saying is that right now we are living in a health crisis, but we're actually creating an education crisis that will have repercussions for years and maybe decades to come.
We're creating an economic and well-being crisis. So, education is very much integrated in terms of life opportunities, in terms of well-being, in terms of people's, life and their chances in life. So we saw a very quick revert to quote unquote emergency virtual learning without a clear plan in terms of what that curriculum was going to look like, without really thinking about how that was then going to be integrated into the next school year, and without making any revisions to the following school year or the school year after that.
You argued early in the pandemic for a Canadian COVID task force coordinated at the federal level to cover education as well as health, finance, and emergency preparedness. Why did you make that argument?
When you're in a protracted emergency situation, coordination is key. And really what that does is to allow all the different constituencies, all the different public services to share information, and then, of course, to mobilize that information all the way through up to the grassroots level. If we had a federal Department of Education or some such ministry, then, that might have been something that could have been done.
Do you think that was a lost opportunity?
Yes. We have one of the largest bureaucracies per capita in the world. That tells us we have capacity. We also are a G7 country. That means we're one of the largest economies in the world with many, many resources. We also, by the way, within the G7, have one of the smallest demographics of children to cater for in school. I'm not pointing fingers here at any one level of government, but what I am saying is the coordination in a decentralized system of governance, as we have in Canada, is key.
Well, you were quoted as saying it was very short-sighted, and I could also see that there was very little planning or preparation around schooling, at least in Ontario. How different was Ontario's response to pandemic learning than other provinces?
Well, Ontario's response to school closures and education disruption was an outlier. We did an analysis across the country to see how all the provinces fared in terms of school closures. And Ontario by far had the largest numbers of school closures, now at 28 weeks. I think now Quebec is like maybe 12 or 14 weeks. So we're about double that. If the government deems a particular sector or a particular service as essential, it requires all the things one would need to effectively taper down services in other sectors without completely bankrupting or decimating them, and making sure that we protect education and health. And that was not done. So that, school closures were very much the lever for potential control of the pandemic in the first and second year. And we saw that actually was not very effective in terms of cases and in terms of transmission. And I say this as somebody who has been looking at the inequity issues of the pandemic and who's been looking at education and income inequities and researching that for over 20 years. So I'm not deaf or blind to the real human costs. But there's a question around how do we prioritize? And that was not done in Ontario.
I'm curious to know how much kids absorbed during this, how much kids actually learned. Do we know?
It's clear that there have been learning losses in the areas of math and literacy. It could be anywhere between 2 months to 2 years, depending on the system, depending on the subject, depending on the length of closures. But it's clear that there have been losses in certain instances, racialized students in certain instances, of course, children with special needs whose really needs were not being met at all through this emergency virtual instruction period, that children coming from lesser educated households, children coming from neighborhoods that are generally more deprived.
When we talk about education in the province, there's a lot of innovation happening, including Bloorview School Authority. They provide schooling to kids with special needs, and they've actually partnered with Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital to offer individualized educational programs. We are on our way to speak to Sarah Nauman, the principal, about how they meet the needs of their students. Now, you started this position as principal in February 2020.
That is correct.
And then the world changed so much. We've been hearing a lot of challenges in other school boards. What's the situation been like for you here?
Like everywhere, it was very challenging at the beginning. When that very first wave hit and schools were shut down over March break, we also shut down. Fortunately, the government allowed schools with children with special education needs to reopen. So since September, we have been open almost entirely in person, which has been fabulous for our students.
We've been hearing also about our learning gap coming out of the pandemic. We are still moving through the pandemic. How has that impacted the students here?
I think for students here, when they couldn't be in person, the biggest gap is really the loss of their therapy. Many of our students have communication devices. You just can't replicate. I honestly believe for any child you can't replicate in-person learning, but in particular for students with disabilities, the ability to be on site and have people who are kind of aware of how to use your communication devices, who can give you the therapies you need is of utmost importance.
We live in a province of 14 plus million, and there's about 2 million students in elementary and secondary school, and I don't know if that's even including children with disabilities. And there's only 6 schools based like this. Do you think that's enough?
As being part of a rehabilitation hospital, that's a very specific role we're playing. So I'm not sure if that can be replicated for all students that have disabilities, but what I think we can do is look at the lessons we've learned here and what's working here and seeing how we can use those lessons in other places. And one resource that we have that's really, really new and recent is Project Inclusion.
Tell me about Project Inclusion.
So we noticed that there was this gap, and Holland Bloorview Kids Rehabilitation Hospital, they kind of led the way, and then in partnership with Bloorview School Authority and many of our educators, began a process of creating a fabulous resource that is now free and accessible to educators all over the province. I think there's over 300 voices. If an educator wants to know how we might include a child in a school dance, for an example, you can look at that and you can hear from a parent who can tell you what worked for their child. You can hear the voices of all of the different people and giving their true experience, and that's who we need to hear from.
Why do you think it's important to have that conversation around inclusion?
It makes our whole society richer. We want, and especially when it comes to disability right now, I don't think people are even aware of the prevalence of disability because we don't see it because of a lot of these systemic barriers. You might think no children in your neighborhood have disabilities because you don't see them at your neighborhood school. Well, that's more likely because the school isn't accessible. Our schools are old and they don't have that children can't be accommodated, so children are off at different schools. And when you don't see those children in your neighborhood, you don't realize that you need to learn more about disability.
Do you think, though, that could also go into policy? If they don't have certain voices at the table, it's really hard to make decisions.
The voices absolutely have to be at the table because a school's a microcosm. I mean, we can try to change, we can train all our educators, we can work with all the kids so that they, on anti-bullying so that they're more accepting. But if they're not seeing this surrounding them, if they're not filled in a library filled with books where you see people with disabilities within the pages, and I'm not talking about a book that's about a child with a disability, you can find titles that say, everybody belongs, and there's not a child depicted with a disability. Until we see it everywhere in society, it's going to be really hard for the school to completely fill that gap.
education changed in the last 20, 30, 50 years? During the pandemic, kids have been online and then in person. And even though it's been a bit of a bumpy ride, maybe this is an opportunity to reconsider how education can move forward. I'm going to catch up with Dwayne Matthews, an education strategist and innovation evangelist.
I'm going to start with a big question, but looking over the past 2 years, what's your take on where we're at with education as we move through the pandemic?
The pandemic allowed us to see a lot of the challenges that we had in education. So really sort of unveiled a lot of that and showed us where there were cracks, but where there were lots of opportunities for us to improve. As a result, I'm radically optimistic about the potential moving forward.
You've been saying for many years that we're preparing our children for an education in the year 2019 instead of 2030. How are we doing that?
We need to think about technology and school and economy all together. And so if we think about it that way, the current model of school that we have is from the Prussian model, which is about 200 years old. And we use a very specific core technology, and that technology is called a printed book. It's 600-year-old technology, and we surround it with a pencil, 1662, a pen, 1888, a blackboard, 1801. And now what we have is something called the Fourth Industrial Revolution, where we have a number of different technologies converging into one space, and they're creating a very different reality. They're digitally transforming our economy and our way of life. What we did in the past was we prepared our students to meet with an industrial outlook and an industrial economy. So we have to start thinking about how do we prepare children to go out and meet and be successful in that particular economy. And it's very, very important that we get this right.
So how do we get that right?
We start to think about how do we make that investment and who are all the stakeholders that benefit. Currently, we have a massive skills gap. Most Fortune 500 companies have thousands of jobs open and nobody to fill them. So there is a disconnect. We also know that there's lots of opportunities where people don't have to go work for somebody. They can create value on their own. The other piece is not about online or in person. The conversation is, how do we get a wider access of students to have a wider access to success? If we judge current school by our post-secondary rate, most countries in the world fall somewhere between 35 and 40%. Why is that a profound number? Because ironically, if I got 35 and 40% on my marks, I wouldn't be considered to be doing very well. And so we need to figure out, how do we personalize education at scale, and how do we borrow from other industries to be able to do that?
Because I think for a lot of parents, children learn differently. Children have different abilities, but we've set up a structure where all children have to fit into kind of this mold. Is that what you're getting at? Education should be approached individually?
Currently, we over-index on standardization, but some pieces do need to be standardized, and some pieces need to be personalized because they create more avenues for success. And I think we haven't sat back and thought about what are the tools and techniques that we have at our disposal to increase student success across a broad range of students.
So what have you seen in other places that you've taught that we can implement now?
Some schools use asynchronous student support, where students go and they do online asynchronous, and then there's a teacher supporting them. What you've seen is a lot of increased performance, particularly with students that have challenges around psychological safety. I think online learning is one of the tools to being a great equalizer. It's definitely not a panacea. I don't think it's a one shot. I don't think we go from let's replace in-person to online. I think digital technology is a tool. It's a hammer, it's a screwdriver. We have to think about the house that we'd like to build, and we gather up all the tools that we need, and we go out and build a house. But we can't start with the hammer.
Let's go. Good girl.
been talking to people throughout the province on their school experience, especially these past few years as we navigate the pandemic. Right now, I'm on my way home to continue the conversation online. I hope you can join us. Come on, Zoe, let's go. Good girl, boo-boo. Good girl.
Without a doubt, learning and experiencing school during a global pandemic has had its moments. Kids learn from home and then back to in person and then back to online. When at school, kids have had to stay in cohorts and haven't been allowed to interact with other kids outside of their classrooms. No after-school sports in some regions. It's not like how most of us remember school. Throughout, we've called children resilient, and we've heard from experts who say that kids will bounce back. But will they? What was lost and what was gained? Today, we're having a conversation about that and more, and we want to hear from you, our audience, as we go along. Right now, I'll have our guests, Annie Kidder and Jay Williams, introduce themselves. Jay, can you introduce yourself, what you do? Nice to see both of you, by the way. Jay, go ahead.
Good to see you too, Nam. Hey, everyone, my name is Jay Williams, a teacher in Toronto for Toronto District School Board, middle school teacher, grade 8 math teacher, science teacher, and English teacher.
And Annie, good to see you as well. Can you please introduce yourself and what you do?
Nice to see you. I am Annie Kidder, and I'm the Executive Director of People for Education, which is an organization that's been around in Ontario for 25 years now. And we're basically a public education think tank. We do lots of research and lots of communications around what's important in education and how should our education system be evolving so that it works for all students.
Glad to have both of you here. And also, hi to everybody watching us online. We are going to be looking to your questions as well in just a few moments. Jay, I'll start with you. I think as a teacher, you've kind of probably seen the best and worst of parents through this. Sometimes you've been our best friends, and sometimes we felt like maybe you are our worst enemy. And so as a teacher, can you describe your experience over the last couple of years?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, Nam. It's been a whirlwind, I'll say that. It's been great at times and it's been difficult. The phrase that you mentioned before about students being resilient has been thrown around so often, and I myself used it very, very readily earlier on in the pandemic as well. But we need to be careful with that phrase, specifically when thinking about the gaps that are now formed and exist in terms of how we move forward with our students, specifically looking at again those gaps both in class, out of class, social, emotional, wellness, essentially as well. I don't know if we'll actually see the outcome of this pandemic and this world pause and the gaps that are present for the next maybe a few years or so, realistically.
And Annie, Jay brought up the fact that I mentioned kids are resilient, and we heard that a lot during the pandemic, that there's a lot of uncertainty, they'll be okay. But recently I saw a meme that said, if kids were resilient, we wouldn't need therapists when we became adults. So understandably, the concern for students was to just kind of have some continuity of learning. What has been lost in the focus on just getting the basics alone?
It's such a big question about, what's gone on in the last 2 years. And I think that there's been so much. For one thing, the pandemic and all the disruption really exposed a lot of cracks in the system that were already there, really amplified the inequities in the system. And I'm not sure, I am sure that we haven't paid enough attention to what this has meant to kids, not just the disruption, but the pandemic itself. And that, the amount of anxiety kind of out there in the world that we've all been living with, and trying to kind of comprehend what this means. So that you're a kid, you're trying to go to school, you have all these incredibly important social relationships and relationships with your teacher that all get messed up. Milestones got lost that you can kind of, be snooty about as an adult, but that are really, really important. Graduating, moving from elementary school to high school, all of there's so much that happens in school and around school. And I think there's been a tendency to go, okay, how can we make sure we get, the old-fashioned, the basics in there? And that we haven't, really paid attention to all that was lost. And I think that the point is really well taken, that the fallout from this, I don't want to be a total, sound like doom and gloom here. But the fallout is going to last. And it's not just simplistic kind of learning loss. It's much more than that.
And I don't think you're being doom and gloom at all, because I think one of the things that I've tried to balance as a parent is try to express the level of, risk, wear your mask if you're in a, but also trying to not make them scared to leave the house, because there was a point when they didn't want to leave the house. I'm going to pull up some stats from a February 2022 survey by the Canadian Mental Health Association showing what parents observed about their children. 60% of parents surveyed said the pandemic has been difficult for their children. 65% believe their children worry about an uncertain future. 67% of parents think not going to school in person has been difficult for children. And 80% believe not being able to do regular activities and not seeing friends has been really hard. Before the pandemic, I used to get really stressed out on the weekends because my kids had so many activities with their friends or so many birthday parties to go to. And in the pandemic, as a parent, I was like, I really miss that having that larger village. Jay, how aware are you that your students have a lot of worries and disappointments? These things might be on their minds.
Very aware, to be honest. We have very frank and open discussions in class. I'd say pretty much daily at this point, more so because I teach grade 8. I'm understanding that they are transitioning into a new world, going to high school. So we talk about what that looks like, but also talk about what that looks like now too, specifically for them, because they're the first group, or I guess first or second group at this point now, transitioning to high school through this COVID or this pandemic time. They've developed some skills, good for them on that part that they'll be able to take with them moving forward, but also they've been at a loss as well, because as Annie mentioned, they didn't get a lot of these things that we consider to be normal in grade 8, moving on to high school. We are now talking about, luckily, having some sort of grade 8 trip, and again, having just even a graduation, crossing the stage with their peers before transitioning into this next phase in high school. Something that hasn't happened over the past couple of years, or it was virtual, which we know is not the same.
When we look at all those numbers that we just looked up, is there a lesson to be learned in those stats, not just when another crisis happens, but in general?
Part of an education is preparing you and allowing you to be a kind of capable human being, which involves a whole range of coping skills and relationship skills and collaboration skills and understanding how your own feelings and other people's feelings. And I think that what this is showing us is that we have to pay attention to much more when we think about public education. And in a way, we were talking about whether kids are resilient, and really we should also be asking whether or not the school system itself is resilient enough.
We have questions from our followers on Instagram, and there's a comment from @Bulrushes and Lily Pads, who is a teacher, and they write, "I kept my Google Classroom open during lunch. We called it lunch meet, pun intended. I had kids eat together in small breakout groups online. I tried to create both friend groups and new friend groups. Kids loved it." I really love that comment, because I remember trying to log on to Google Classroom for the first time for my kids in March 2020, and I almost threw my laptop outside the window because it was so hard. And I'm like, how are kids managing this? Also, how are teachers who are parents managing this? Jay, how easy or difficult was it to engage with students online?
Very difficult. I'll be quite honest with you. So we have those students who are, again, for a lack of a better term, resilient, and they'll figure it out. They're very technologically savvy. But then we had students who, for whatever reason, were struggling with a lot of things potentially. Could that be mental health, wellness, not having the social connections with their peers, was obviously a concern moving forward. But then, taking it even further, we had students who just didn't have access to a laptop or internet, or I had one family in particular who had a cell phone that four students were using, or supposed to be using, that parents had to then use as well too. So I mean, we need to look at all of these things when looking at why students were disengaged or uninterested or even had the ability to learn in the first place during, especially the first wave of emergency learning, not so much remote learning or even homeschooling at that time.
So earlier this month, in April, as part of its $600 million commitment in the Learning Recovery Action Plan for 2022-23, the Ontario government announced funding for mental health supports and programs. We reached out to the Ministry of Education, and here is a statement Minister Stephen Lecce sent us right before we started this event. It says, "We recognize that more than ever before, many students face mental health challenges, and we want them to know help is here. That is why our government increased mental health funding to $90 million, expanding mental health supports to the highest levels in Ontario history. For the current and coming school year, we have invested $300 million to hire roughly 3,000 more staff, including more mental health workers, teachers, social workers, and guidance counselors to better support students and keep them safe in and outside of the classroom." Annie, no one can argue that funding is not a good thing. It's a great thing to get more money. Does this fill the need that the pandemic has revealed?
Not completely. Nobody wants to look a gift horse in the mouth. Our quarrel with the recovery plan is that it actually talks about the kind of goal of it is to get students back on track. And to me, that kind of denies what we learned in the pandemic, and it denies what Jay's talked about what it really exposed, which is for kids who were already struggling or families already at a disadvantage. They were the ones that really suffered the most in this, that the disadvantage was amplified. And so that, yes, we can, add bits of money. It's incredibly important. We survey all the principals in the province, and they also expressed real concerns about kids' mental health. But it needs to be within a plan and within a kind of renewal plan going forward. And that's what's missing, I think, in this.
I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk about what's been happening outside of the classroom. Yes, there was a pandemic, but life has kept moving. And when George Floyd was murdered, it led to worldwide and local protests. Then we found out the unmarked graves were uncovered at former residential schools. And now we have, there's wars around the world happening, the war in Ukraine. Jay, how do we help kids understand all of this against the backdrop of a pandemic?
I'm glad you raised all of those points, all equally important. One thing I can speak for myself and say is I tackle those issues and topics head on in my class. I understand that students have opinions. They've been exposed to certain conversations, either amongst their peer groups or at home. But that's not something I run away from, to be quite honest. We engage in inquiry projects and opportunities so that they can ask these questions and get them answered. If I don't have answers, by all means, we find answers together. But a lot of the things that you do mention affect teachers personally, education staff in the building personally, and of course, students personally too. So to shy away from answering those questions, or at least having and engaging in conversations, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. Specifically, obviously, the George Floyd murder that was captivating the whole world at that time was something that finally provided an opportunity for myself to dive into head on and have these conversations. And from that, opportunities came for a lot of my students to finally, not just Black students, but all students to engage in this work in the classroom, because it's been missing for so long. And obviously when the unmarked graves of the Indigenous children, again, who were murdered too, again, it lent opportunity to, again, engage in these conversations, but make it more so than just a lot of the token assignments that we see during specific times of the year. And that's, I think, some of the benefits that obviously came out of ugly situations and ugly events that happened and took the world by storm in addition to everything happening with this pandemic.
And Annie, as adults, we've had we've had a lot of conversations about when the pandemic hit, it kind of paused everything that was going around, and people became attuned into maybe stuff that wasn't happening within their community? Are such difficult news events teachable moments for students?
Part of learning when you're really, really young, and it's something that's done really intentionally in early childhood education, in kindergarten, is paying attention to all of those, the kind of skills that we sort of dismiss a little bit about relationships and feelings and communicating and, kind of navigating the world, learning to, play with other kids, but also learning to understand yourself and your emotions so that when we hit times like this as human beings, we are, and it's not just demanding of everybody to be resilient, but that we're able to actually to articulate what's going on for ourselves, which is I'm very old and I still find it incredibly hard, but it should be something that we recognize that's a foundational part of learning, that these are teachable, learnable, as Jay says. When I listen to Jay, I go, that's what classrooms should be like all the time.
And I think some parents sometimes grapple with, should I speak to my kids? Should I protect them a little bit longer? My kids being Black, there's certain things that they experience and I have no choice but to talk to them from a very young age. But we've been able to have these conversations together because I want them to care about other people. And I think maybe the pandemic, one of the silver linings has been that community. We've really seen a lot of community, but we do have a question from Nathan. Thanks so much for contributing. Nathan, go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. I think this is directed maybe at Annie, and it's a point from earlier on when Minister Lecce's statement was read. He promised that there would be about 3,000 new staff positions, which is definitely welcomed by teachers and educators. Back earlier in the pandemic, we were promised a huge influx of public health nurses in the schools that we never saw materialize. Now we're being told that there will be 3,000 staff members in some capacity to help out with student mental health. I'm wondering, with about almost 5,000 public schools, both high school and elementary schools in Ontario, what is that going to look like? Or maybe the question is, what do you hope that it looks like? Is that actually going to result in bodies in schools? And what can we expect with less than one person per school addressing mental health needs?
Well, and it's important to understand that money comes from the provincial government and goes to school boards, and there is quite a bit of flexibility from school boards' perspective on where and how that money's spent. And there's a lot of robbing Peter to pay Paul. There's a lot of, we really need this right now over here. But you are right. Over the last more than 2 years, the thousands of extra staff have not materialized. And it has been, it has been the need, and it's been the need for educators, for principals, for students, not in a kind of overall way, in a comprehensive way. So not just to, I always worry about how we talk about mental health, because I think often we're talking about mental illness, or we're talking about people who are really struggling rather than the health part of mental health. Because what we still need more of is all access to all of the resources outside of schools, or to give support to teachers so they can go, I can see right now you need something more, and I know how you can access it. Because, teachers can identify those kids who need more help, but if you are out there in the world looking for help for your kid, it's very, very hard to find. So I'm not being cynical, but I don't think we're going to see, suddenly, 3,000 more staff. Certainly not permanently, because again, and it was warned when the funding was released, this is 1 year. And so you're going to hire 3,000 staff and then fire them all in a year? What it actually is the plan there? And I think that, so I'm sorry to be depressing about it. It is important, and it's important that the money is there, but more is definitely needed.
Nathan, thank you so much for your question. That was a great question. We have another question from Suzanne.
It's actually not a question. It's more of a comment. I've been a school librarian for a few years. I'm teaching for over 20. And there's such amazing books out right now. So I guess this is a shout out to schools that support libraries, because they don't all fund and support them, and to our local libraries. And any librarian will be able to point you in the right direction. Or, go to your local bookstore and just check out some of those picture books. They're really not just for little kids. One that comes to mind, Ruby Finds a Worry, is fantastic. It puts the language to a lot of the feelings that the kids and adults we can't really name. And there are many, many other ones. That's just one of the many.
Suzanne, thank you so much for your comment. I think that's a great comment, because sometimes parents don't have the language to communicate with your kids, but you learn so much through through reading. And I'm a huge fan of libraries. When we first moved to Canada, going to the library just kind of like opened the world to me, and it gave me access to a whole world that I didn't even know was there. Annie, earlier on, we talked about soft skills, which are the things that students learn through collaboration, social interaction, extracurricular activities. And of course, during the pandemic, some school boards didn't have extracurricular activities. Are skills learned through those opportunities? Can we ever recover those?
I hope so. But I think that they should be being learned through everything. So we have a tendency still, even though, and I hate calling them soft skills only because it makes them sound not important, or that they're separate. We sometimes call them non-cognitive skills too. But I think that the evidence is really strong that, here we are, our brains are all, attached. And that the learning of those skills needs to be thought of as a really important part of education, so that it needs to be embedded in curriculum.
Jay, one thing that's been laid bare in the pandemic is the amount of inequity in our society. What's been your experience with helping students understand and make space for each other's specific challenges?
One thing I know I've done is reestablish my boys mentoring group. And that's done at lunchtime after school. It's connecting with outside resources. It's ensuring that, some students who might have it a bit tougher than some other ones, who are marginalized, who are racialized, who essentially come from quote unquote prouder neighborhoods, they have access to a lot of the resources that they wouldn't necessarily have in a normal quote unquote time as well. They have access to me, who is a wealth of knowledge, who's been through the TDSB or the public school board and is deemed a success at this point as well too. So it's making time to ensure that we provide all opportunities to students as much as we can, but also leaving room for voice and opportunity to share what they're feeling on a daily. It is something that and that's one of the, as you mentioned before, Nam, one of the silver linings that came out of the pandemic. Students are now speaking up a lot more in terms of what they feel they need for their best, education practices at this point.
We've run out of time. I'd love to talk to you for another hour. Jay and Annie, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was great.
That is a wrap on The Thread this month. Thank you for joining us online on this conversation as we talk about the school experience. Really appreciate all your comments, especially on Instagram. Next month, we're going to be talking about the provincial election in Ontario. So let us know what it is that you would like us to cover. Again, big thank you, and we will see you next month. Bye.